now it's time for Topic of the Week.
All right, people, we're going to talk all things sort of 1999, INXS, Terence Trent Darby, etc. there. Now, there's a bit of a UK link with Terence, and I know you touched upon a few things about Terence last week with Keith. He was an interesting guy, particularly the late 80s, in terms of his breakthrough, and INXS obviously, looking for a lead single. We didn't know. 1999, I think we were just glad they were going to get on stage and do something, and we'll tackle, that pathway and redress that sort of sequences of events that led them to work with Terence. But do you have a memory of Terence Trent Darby coming in and dominating the charts? Because he actually broke in the UK first and America second, despite him being an American.
Yeah, I do remember. He was on the Tube. And I remember thinking, whoa, he looks a bit Prince-like. I know that he hates that, but he's like, oh, he's a bit of a toned-down Prince, a bit of a cool cat. And his voice, oh my God. So yeah, I ran out and got, according to the hard lines, and played it. Such an awesome album. It's quite devastated actually that he had to change his name, and it did go a little bit awful for him. But yeah, funny enough, me and Lee were talking about Terence, and he was saying, who'd have thought that Terence Trent Darby could step into Michael's shoes, be it for one day, and put a twist on it as well. He owned it. His voice really leaned towards their funk element and soul.
So the cultural stereotypes is anyone who's black gets compared to a black person, and I guess there was low-hanging fruit to compare Terence to Prince because he was black, and it's a bit like when Samuel L. Jackson gets compared to Lawrence Fishburne. Someone doesn't like it. He goes, "Well, we all look the same, do we?" And whatever there, but
Gone, but I mean, Michael got compared to Jim Morrison. No, it doesn't have to be a race thing.
No, I don't. I guess for Terence, just an interesting sort of twist on things. Let me just sideline. If I mention the names Bruce Willis, the actor, Michael Fassbender, the actor, Diane Kruger, Martin Lawrence, John McEnroe, Rob Thomas. There's a bit of a link between all of those people and Terence Trent Darby.
Right, Al, what's this? Come on.
The link is they actually aren't American. They're all born in West Germany.
Oh, really?
Now, what happened in West Germany, particularly in the 50s and 60s more so, there was a naval base there or an army base there, and there was a lot of expat military, particularly American families were over there. So Bruce Willis, John McEnroe, as I said, Terence Trent Darby, Martin Lawrence, Diane Kruger, Michael Fassbender, who a lot of people associate with being Irish, American or whatever, but all these people were born in West Germany, and Terence was born in that area as well. He came from a family, sort of a military family, but he, when he grew up, actually was quite a successful boxer, Golden Gloves lightweight sort of champion, within sort of Florida. And he, when he was over in Germany, he had a band there, and when you hear, I remember as a teenager when I heard him speak normally, his accent's not bogged sort of down American sort of accent. It's sort of a hybrid, and I thought he could have been British. I didn't quite know because he seemed to dominate the UK charts. America sort of broke later for him, and then you had Milli Vanilli come out, who I guess again from a hair point of view was around that same time. Terence was probably one of the biggest sort of breakthrough artists during that 88, 89 period.
Sweetheart, listen.
If You Let Me Stay, Sign Your Name, Dance Little Sister, Wishing Well. These were huge hits, and his album was massive. And I guess he was probably, as I said, one of the biggest artists on the planet. I guess through the success in the UK, that then crossed over into America, his homeland. And he looked like being sort of one of the next big things. And I reckon he might have waited about 3-4 years to do his next album that had some success. But then he waited a bit longer for his next album. And I've got a bit of an expression here, and I don't mean to patronise him here, but he sort of went mystical. Do you know what I mean by that? When someone goes a bit mystical, he changed his name, but that wasn't because he had to. That was just because he thought, I'd like to call myself Sananda Maitreya. He moved to, I think to Spain or Italy, I think from memory, where he's, literally, now does recordings on his own website and things. But, from a point of view, I mean, this guy, sort of late 80s, early 90s, was as big as you could be. And come across INXS's desk in 99 was a little bit of a left of centre choice. But do you remember Nick Egan on one of our podcasts said, that Terence was sort of like the black Michael Hutchins? Do you remember that?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. I think it was Nick Egan, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's just got that sex appeal, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, I'll agree that you're saying that. But he probably had that sort of, stage presence that we'll talk a little bit later about. But as a sort of a process, if we go to INXS for a moment, it was 1999, that had that horrible 1998 that agreed Rehearsal shine before Michael had passed to take a year off. Coming to 1999, there were lots of rumours about different things. Would the band reform? Would they, there was talk about them becoming sort of, the Farris brothers and things like that. And Kirk going to get up the front and start singing? And, in those days, I mean, there was just rumours circulating everywhere. The idea to come and work at Stadium Australia wasn't something they sought out. In fact, it actually came about from the late Dean Jones, the famous Australian cricketer, who was part of a consortium, who was part of the opening of Stadium Australia, which was the venue for our upcoming Olympics the next year in Sydney. And they wanted to have a big opening. They invited the FIFA All-Stars out to play a soccer game against our Socceroos. And they wanted to have an opening act to launch it with music. And then they had a support band, which I think it was Men at Work and one or two other support bands. But they talked INXS in because Dean Jones knew Tim quite well through Tim's love of cricket. And that's how it all sort of emanated from there, B.
I heard there was more people on the list than Terence to frontline them as well. And that's why they wouldn't announce it so much. How ahead of time did you hear that Terence was going to be?
Back in those days, I remember when I first heard about it, I remember it being in my office in Melbourne and it was just on the radio. And again, we didn't really have the internet then. And it was like he was coming out to play a gig, and it wasn't announced he was the new lead singer. It was just that he'd been announced to come out and sing with the band. If we just put ourselves back in INXS's heads at that time, they'd played in 1998, the end of that year, the Mushroom concert, which we talked about a couple of weeks ago. I think that gave them a sense of belonging, of thinking, we got up there and, broke the ice, so to speak. And Michael and Terence were quite good friends. Terence had a stage persona that probably could do justice to the material. Through whatever, circumstances, it led to obviously him coming over to do it. And I think on our socials, there's a couple little sort of things people can go and see behind the scenes with Terence rehearsing with the band. I think, as I'll state a little bit later, you could see he's quite introverted as a personality. When you hear him speak in the media, he's quite softly spoken and quite sort of, as I said, a bit of a mystical sort of character. The ability to gel with the INXS boys, who are pretty jocular and pretty sort of, been on the road and touring.
Very Aussie
Yeah.
blood.
I think also what the distinction was with Terence has always been a solo artist, and INXS were always a band of brothers. So this sort of jocularity and this sort of sense of 5-6 guys together as a sum of the parts was probably a unique sort of concept for Terence. I don't think Kirk minds me saying this, but I did reach out to Kirk a couple of weeks ago just to get some insights as to sort of just, what was the goal behind, having Terence, be involved with the band, and was it a bit of a ring try buy, if I could sort of speak sort of, flippantly, because you don't know what you don't know. And they thought, we'll do a gig and we're not committed to one way or the other. And often how people become part of a band, or if a new singer comes in, they do rent try by. They'll see if the chemistry's there. They'll see if it resonates. They'll see if there's a connectivity. I think to Terence's credit, once he got on stage and started playing, and the songs there and his ability, to even play around with the lyrical structure. Like, if you listen to the 4 songs, he sings them differently to Michael. He does sing them like a soul R&B type singer, but does them well. And you don't really want a Michael Hutchence imitator. There'll be one of those particular songs we'll go with today. But I think he when he got on stage, he definitely thrived. And I know Kurt was like, wow, from behind the stage and in rehearsal to then see him go out and play live, there was a chalk and cheese comparison. B.
What do you mean?
Well, chalk being I
know what chalk and cheese means, but I mean, so he wasn't really into playing with the band as much because he... No,
I think he was into playing with them. I just think when they were in rehearsals, he was very, very shy. He was sort of sitting there behind the drums and not quite sort of as expressive in learning the material or being just outgoing, I guess. And the band were just thought that, he may, get on stage and, project what he was projecting sort of in rehearsal, but it was sort of the opposite,
Perhaps he had a bit of jet lag.
Maybe. Look, and again, it's a bit of a no-end sort of game sometimes when you're coming in to, replace Michael seemingly to an Australian audience. You would have been nervous about that scenario.
Yeah.
But he's coming into a band dynamic, and I think, ultimately, as Kirk had said, he probably, really was ultimately a solo performer, and the idea of being in an ongoing band dynamic probably they sensed wasn't going to suit him and vice versa.
But How amazing was that union on stage?
Yeah.
Big smiles on everyone's faces.
Yeah. Well, June 12th, 1999, I actually went to that gig. So I flew from Perth, a lady friend at the time, and a mate of mine from Melbourne, and he flew up and we met in Sydney, and we went to the gig and went to the soccer. He loved the soccer, and we liked the music, and we sort of made a night of it, and or a weekend of it. But it was great. It was, it was big atmosphere there. We'll go into sort of the stage theatrics in a moment. For Tim, there was a bit of a presser at the time. I think Tim stated that this is an INXS show and Terence is merely lending his vocals. Kirk, it's for one night only. And then he says, at this stage, which is a little bit contrary. Andrew said people of both sexes had approach to the band, people such as Bono, etc. there. I think Tim thought that Terence was quite soulful and had a musical sort of, soul there that sort of lent itself well to the band. And I think we saw that when they went on stage. Interestingly, that night, I think Wendy Matthews, who was part of Gary's band Absent Friends, also sung before the major gig. The crowd, it was 90,000 people that night, B. It was huge. The technology in those days and big screens weren't sort of around. They did quite a smart thing when they captured the concert. They had about 500 people on the ground in front of the stage. So that a lot of the footage you see is quite zoomed in. You don't get as many aerial shots like a Wembley. It was quite sort of well done. So the band had a crowd in front of them on the ground, and then you had occasionally the odd crowd shot from the stage out.
Right.
But it was the footage isn't, there's not a lot of footage of it at the time, but YouTube will sort of show you what's sort of there. From the song's point of view that night, they opened up with New Sensation. They went into Kick, which was probably appropriate, being a soccer event, B. They did a little tribute to Michael there with Never Tear Us Apart next. And then they came in with a bit of quite a varied direction for the song, What You Need. I think the next year when they were with John Stevens at the Olympics closing ceremony, they played a similar type sort of version of What You Need. But it is quite different to the standard version. All up, the gig went for 18 minutes with the 4 songs. And I just remember the crowd were quite supportive and into it, and it was a sort of a great atmosphere, and it served the moment particularly well. I know in the last couple of weeks you've probably gone back and watched it a bit, B. Any takeaways for you?
Well, I just think it's quite a magical union, like I've mentioned before. And, INXS hadn't played for a while, and Terence hadn't played for a while. So it would have been I would have been mega excited to have been in the crowd at that point. So you weren't actually on the, in the centre, you were on the side, were you?
I was in the stands, yeah.
You're in the stands, but you still got a good atmosphere.
Yeah. We're up in the stands, sort of looking down, etc. there on the whole sort of thing. And then you could see that they'd had a cordon off section on the ground with about 500 people dancing around in front of the stage to create a bit of an atmosphere for the TV.
And did you run after the coach afterwards?
Oh, no. If I did, I would have got a yellow card, probably. A bit of an interesting thing. I know when you played some of those Terence songs earlier, I remember the time he was often compared to a guy called Sam Cooke, who was a sort of an R&B soul singer from the 50s and 60s.
Darling,
you can see a real similarity with Terence's unique voice and Sam Cooke's. I know it sort of reminded me when I was just watching it, the Ben Harper interview that he does for the original Sin album when he came and lent vocals to Never Tear Us Apart. And he says, if you don't think that Never Tear Us Apart is one of the fucking greatest soul songs of all time, you're not on this planet. And, it was a really lovely compliment from Ben Harper to say that. But again, it reminded me of INXS's music that was one of the rare white band artists to chart on the black charts, particularly with the Kick album when it came out. Like Need You Tonight, as I've often said, is a very black sounding song.
Yeah.
A lot of them thought, those brothers in INXS are really good. They didn't realise they were white guys.
Well, I'm a little bit older than you. And do you remember the Levi adverts and the kickback to like that retro look of the 50s? Do you remember those?
Yep.
Yeah, so there was another band called Curiosity Killed the Cat. Do you remember them?
Right, okay.
Like all of those, they got that soulful, like you say, Sam Cooke feel to them because those songs were being played in those adverts.
Yeah, well, I mean, Levi's often attached themselves to music, back in sort of those ad campaigns that, over the years have gone global. I think also, too, I think back to INXS working with Ray Charles and obviously, as I said, Ben Harper and now Terence Trent Darby. As I said, the music is, as I said, cross-cultural. It's not a singularity to it. It has this sort of cultural overtones that goes into different areas. And it's not appropriation. I think INXS as a band has worn their heart and their roots on their hearts on their sleeve, so to speak, because they grew up listening to such a variety of melting pot styles on the radio. So seeing Terence come in and sort of sing those songs, a soulful, ode to black singer style, really fitted in well. But look, ultimately the band, and I think Terence and that, they just sort of were like, was fantastic, but it was just that, it was like a date, they had a date B.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, we were appreciative of each other, but it probably not going to take it to the next level. And I think that there was no animosity. There's never been a fallout. There's never been angst about it. I think it was just, as I said, you go on a date and you take it to the second date, and they just didn't.
It was one night only. Yeah. One night only.
Yeah.
I did hear that he started singing his old songs again, so I might have to dig in and see where he's singing those. That would be nice to hear him sing those old songs.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to sing them ever again.
Well, I think that the thing for INXS, which was good, was that as much as the mushroom thing was great for the band to get on stage, they did say afterwards, well, it was never really about us that night. It was about helping Jimmy out and the mushroom thing, and it was us sort of coming in to just play and see whether we could have the gumption to get up and do it. I think this particular night, though, did give the band a sense of a stepping stone that they wanted to continue and that there was love and appreciation. And I think the media and the fallout and the results of that gig were encouraging. It was a standalone gig. It wasn't like there was pressure for the band to justify it all. They played the venue. I did the opening night. It was a stepping stone for them to get their confidence and start getting back to work. And as we find out, we go into the year 2000 and some of the events 2001, again, I look back at this as a stepping stone sort of moment there. Interesting comparisons, B, on a sort of side note, if we go a little bit gossipy here for a moment, and I know you don't like gossip at all, and I know you don't enter this world about love and relationships and all these.
You say you don't, but you're going to go talk about it. Go on.
Well, I'm going to throw it to you. What is the link between Terence Trent Darby?
Oh, right, even though this is your idea.
What is that? What is an off the record, literally, comparison between Terence and Michael and someone else?
Okay, well, Paula probably slept with both of them. Who wouldn't?
Yes, yes. So,
well, you wouldn't, but anyway.
Well, Terence did go there first back in the late 80s when he was flying high in America. For 30 years, he never said anything, but he did come through an interview in the 2000s and 2011, I think, admit that yes, he did have a little dalliance with Paulie Yates when he was about 25, 26. He was confronted by Bob Geldof in New York, and it's on the public record, during about sort of 1987, 88, where he's the bellhops said to him, or the hotelier said, "Can you come downstairs? There's a guy to see you." Who is it? His name's Bob Geldof. He came downstairs and said, "You've been knocking off my wife, I believe."
I think that was very truthful words you said, Bex. I don't think you said that.
I think that. Well, I'm doing the edited version, but I think Terence, to his credit, said, "I do what any smart, articulate, person doers in those times, and that is deny, deny, deny." So, yes, I won't go through the vagaries of how all that sort of played out, but through researching this podcast, B, it was something I think you were aware of because of the Paula documentary, yeah?
Yeah. And I think they were in love, actually. They were in love, but, she was with Bob and they had an open relationship and that's the way it was.
Yeah. And look, just getting back to straighten up a little bit with Terence there, he, as I said, he did change his name, back in sort of 2001. And again, I think, when people talk a bit in the third person, it always is a bit annoying. But Terence said, Terence Trent Darby was dead. He watched his suffering as he died a noble death. After intense pain, I meditated for a new spirit, a new will, a new identity. Maitreya has said that his name change resulted from a series of dreams he had in 1995. The name does not have any religious significance. Maitreya explained that he understood it to mean rebirth. In Sanskrit, Sananda means possessed of happiness, and Maitreya means friendly, kind, loving, and benevolent. From 2001 to 21, Maitreya released 9 studio albums and 4 live albums. Yeah, I think from that sort of point of view, as I said, he got a little bit sort of mystical in terms of, his situation. As I said, I think he sort of lives in Italy, pretty much for the last sort of 20 or so years. And I'm a bit sad that he had the world at his feet and he probably, sometimes he may have just outsmarted himself a little bit there, but if he's happy, and that's his level of success. But I still think he had the potential to go and become one of the greats and not just sort of a 1 or 2 album sort of zeitgeist guy, you know. Some people probably still hear his songs in the movie Knocked Up. I think he had 3 songs in the movie Judd Apatow movie Knocked Up. But his songs are still played here in Australia, and their quality, you know, particularly the first album. And, you know, from that sort of point of view, as I said, he's got something that's he can be proud of, particularly, you know, selling over 10, 20 million copies of that debut album. So, but B, that's Terence and INXS all wrapped up in a bow. All right, B, well, that's a wrap. Episode 171 in the can.
Wow. We're going to be hitting the 200 before we know it next year.
I know. Probably it could be even around our birthday, around our 4-year-old birthday in May. But I did mention the other week, and you might remember, B, I'm doing my top 50 song countdown in little sections of 10. So what I did want to announce is that I'm probably going to put those into the new year, just with all the recent content and what's been going on. I want to give it a little bit of air to stand alone on its own merit. So
looking forward to hearing those.
Yes, I think our January 14, 15, the first episode of the year, we will share the first 10 of those. And then also next week, we will have our Michael Hutchins solo posthumous album review that's going to come out actually on Boxing Day. So we'll let you get through your Christmas Eves and through your Christmas days and all your family stuff. But as you've got a full belly of turkey or a full belly of seafood or whatever it is in your region, you can dive deep and open up a cool little Boxing Day special of our next episode that will come out on the 26th. So looking forward to that one, B. We haven't done an album review for a while, have we?
Yeah, pretty special to do that for Michael on Boxing Day. So, yeah. Looking forward to that. All
right. Now, are there anything in our competitions we are planning, maybe looking ahead to next year, B? Because I know people love those and things. Are there a few ideas you've got, or are we going to save those to share next year?
Wow, we will save it for the new year. Maybe Boxing Day, we will announce quite a bit more about the competitions that are coming ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to go out today with a song which was the last song played by Terence Trent Darby on stage with INXS. It is What You Need. Great version. I really enjoyed just watching it again for the first time in probably 10, 15 years, seeing the version, the band mixing up the song and the sound and the whole sort of breakdown of the material. And I think Terence does a great job vocally with this. So we're going to go out to that particular track and say thank you for helping INXS find their feet again. Also, right at the end of the podcast today, after that song that Terence sings with INXS, you might hear a little message from Nick Egan about our patron program. Again, if you've enjoyed us this year and you haven't become a patron, whatever there, and you do value what we do, we would value you investing in us, because it allows us to, I guess, keep updating our podcast and our material and our content and our equipment and just our drive to put something together for you guys that you enjoy. So,
and you don't have to become a patron. You can do a little donation for Christmas for, for helping.
Yeah, we do. We get people who yearly do a yearly donation and things like that. But as I said, we are not for profit, and we don't get advertising funding. And
it's getting bigger and bigger already. Wow.
It is. And in 171 episodes, you've never heard an ad. Now, I'm not saying that's not going to occur, because I tell you what, we'll sell it we'll sell out for anyone, B. Having said that,